Thank you, Anna. I hope you can all see the slides that I'm now sharing with you. And again, thank you to John and Anna for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I really wanted to start by setting out some of the challenges that I think exist in this space of developing engineering workforce for the future. And to do that with reference to some recent reports. And then I want to talk a little bit in the second half of my presentation about how we're in the University of Sheffield are responding to those challenges in collaboration with industry partners. And I think a key theme of what I'll be talking about here is that collaboration and the value that we can generate when we have that collaboration between industry and the university. So to jump straight into the challenges, I've drawn these, there's lots of literature that I could have drawn on here, but I've chosen to take the Institution of Engineering and Technology Skills in Demand and Industry reports as the basis for what I'm going to say, just because they've been running now for a number of years, and so we can see points of comparison in what they say. And going back to 2014, when we started the Sheffield Engineering Leadership Academy at the University of Sheffield, the IET was reporting in this survey from industry that 42% of companies were finding that graduates lacked practical experience and that they lacked workplace and professional skills. And that was leadership, communication, working on their own initiative, literacy, numeracy. These kinds of areas were flagged as a particular problem. And so we've been aware of this for a while from these reports. And if you fast forward to 2019 and the 2019 report, actually what you see is that things have got worse rather than better, because in 2019, 73% of companies were reporting that candidates came with good, strong academic knowledge, but often with inadequate workplace skills. That was across the board. It was 59% when we looked just at the graduate level recruits. 86% of companies reported that there were technical skills gaps, again across the board. 57% at graduate level in 2019, but the worrying thing is that that was an increase from 46% in 2017. And another kind of key issue that was highlighted in 2019 is this continuing shortfall of the number of engineers and a lack of diversity across the engineers that are available. So the question is, how do we need to respond to this from an HE perspective, but also from the perspective of engineering employers? So I'm going to start with some suggestions from HE, and then I'm going to look at some suggestions from what I think we can see from an employer perspective, and then again, as I've said, bring that together through some of the initiatives that we've offered in the university to show the power of that collaboration. So I think, first of all, from a higher education perspective, what we need to do more of is focus on the development of intellectual ability in engineering. And by that, what I mean is the ability to deploy knowledge that students have in doing analysis, in creating solutions and value, and in being able to exercise their judgment. So not just having a body of knowledge about engineering, but being able to put that knowledge to work to solve problems and do engineering in the sense that we do engineering in an industry context. Take the knowledge and apply it to problems to create solutions. So what we need to do is be providing the knowledge and the technical and professional skills, but then also using authentic learning experiences, so real project-based experiences that allow students to make connections and apply their learning to those problems so that they can move beyond having lots of knowledge with which to pass exams and into being able to have productive command of that knowledge in a way that allows them to operate as a professional engineer. To do that, we need to engage with employers and recognise that employers are experts in industry-relevant skills and applications. We have lots of, obviously, academics working on our programs who haven't had experience and certainly haven't had recent experience of working in an industry context. And yet what we're trying to do is to prepare graduates who, the majority of whom are going to go and work in industry. And so the best way that we can bridge that gap is to work in partnership with industry collaborators. And then our job as educators is to bring pedagogical knowledge about good learning design and use that alongside the input we get from industry to interpret the needs of industry into our program designs, into the degree programs that we offer, and the wider initiatives around those degree programs, so that we're really addressing what industry needs in terms of future graduate talent. And we also, in terms of that diversity question and the need to expand the pool of engineers, need to work with employers at other levels of education to promote engineering more. And I think one of the challenges we have here is that both from an industry perspective and from a higher education perspective, we tend to focus on students who are just the stage before where we want to have some involvement with them. So a lot of the work that we do in terms of outreach happens with A-level students because the next step for them is going to be coming into a university. But I think if we really want to see the kind of long-term change that we're aiming for here and address these problems that are continuously reported by organisations like IET, we really need to be starting much earlier in the education pipeline and inspiring students about engineering much earlier so that they're making choices earlier in their education that lead to opportunities at higher education and beyond in engineering. And I think one way we might do that is to think about how we adopt a train the trainer approach. So we do lots of initiatives where we work directly with students, but they're really resource intensive because we have to continuously go and work with students as they move out of the school and new students come through. And so there's a constant need to be delivering that kind of training. Whereas actually, if we work with teachers and we equip teachers with the skills to interpret the science and maths national curriculum through the lens of engineering and give them resources and tools to do that, we can reach a lot greater number of students, a much greater number of students more quickly because we train the trainer and then they continue to reach future students. So moving from higher education into industry then and thinking about the kind of employer's perspective, actually there was a really positive finding here from IET, and I pulled this graphic straight from their report, where they say that 81% of the businesses that they reviewed here recognized that they had a responsibility to support students' transition from education and training into the workplace. And that was holistic. It wasn't just about that transition point from whatever educational experience the student is in now out into the workplace, but seeing that as a pipeline of activity and employers wanting to engage with education in order to build that future talent pipeline. So that's a really positive message. And obviously 81%, fantastic. And you know, we really welcome that in higher education, and I'm sure at all levels of education, as an opportunity to work with employers. The problem is that it's not quite working, okay? And so we see that in the same report, it was the IET found that only 26% of companies reported actually working with education. And that's important because there's real scope for industry here in working with education providers to provide authentic learning experiences, to provide real projects and realistic learning experiences for students to engage with that allow them to go beyond building just a body of academic knowledge into being able to apply that and see its relevance in the kind of problems and contexts where they'll be expected to apply that knowledge as they move out into their future career. There's an opportunity too to shape that learning so that it's aligned with industry's needs. So by being really involved in the design of a learning experience, that doesn't just mean that what we want industry to do is come in and help to give us contexts for the kinds of learning that we've decided students need to have, but it's a genuinely collaborative opportunity for industry partners to come in and work with us to shape the kinds of things that students are learning through those projects, and so build that talent pipeline that you recognise as industry partners you need to have access to in terms of graduate talent. And there's also opportunities here. The IET report looked not just at students coming out of education and into industry, but also at the upskilling and continuous development of existing staff in industry. And I haven't had time to look in detail in this presentation at that aspect of things, but it's worth saying, I think, that there are opportunities through this partnership working with education, not just to benefit a future talent pipeline, but also to create opportunities to benefit current staff as well, by having them learning in collaboration with current students, and through those opportunities to work with academic staff. I think we also need to see some strengthening of placement and work experience provision. And I think, you know, I'm pleased to say that in terms of year in industry opportunities, we certainly at the University of Sheffield and across the sector, I think, have good uptake of this. Students wanting to go and spend a year out from their degree working in industry recognizing the value of that before they go, but certainly recognizing the value of that when they come back. And you know, we see that students come back to studying after having been in industry, fundamentally different people and fundamentally different learners with a totally different perspective and understanding on engineering. And the uptake of that is increasing. We're getting more and more students coming through and wanting to go on that route. It's much harder, though, for students to get short-term placements. And in the context of the Leadership Academy that I'll talk a bit about in a minute, we have our students try to do summer placements where they spend 10 to 12 weeks working in an industry context in order to start to see the value of some of the skills that they're gaining, and to see people in a business context, an industry context, using those skills. And actually, it's increasingly difficult for students to find those kind of summer placement opportunities. And in fact, the IET report shows that only 40% of companies offer these kind of shorter work experience placements at university level. And I think from the kind of discussions I have with industry partners, that partly comes from a recognition of where the value is in delivering these kinds of placements. So I often hear partners telling me that you know, they prefer to offer a year in industry placement rather than a summer placement, because they get more value from that. They have somebody who, after a couple of months of induction, is able to then contribute to the business for the remaining 10 months of a placement. And so actually there's the implication there is that inducting somebody to work with you just for a shorter period of time over the summer doesn't deliver back the same business value. But actually what we see in contrast to that is that there's really great value to the students in having that 12-week summer placement. They come back with that different perspective. It helps them to engage differently with their learning. And so as part of a pipeline of activity, there does become value to industry in offering those opportunities, because it's about helping to equip students who you might recruit in the future, who might come back the following year and want to do a year in industry, with that experience that helps them connect their classroom learning to those kind of industrial applications. I think also it would be good to explore more opportunities for academic staff to connect with these kinds of opportunities, and how can projects that academic staff are working on link in with work that's going on in industry, and so help academic staff to also appreciate the kinds of contexts that the modern workplace in engineering is creating for students, and so equip us better to be able to prepare students for that. And then finally, I guess you won't be surprised to hear me say this, but we really need industry to help fund some of these kinds of initiatives. But I've caveated that here by saying that it's not necessarily very expensive. You know, £1,000 through to £5,000 goes a really long way in working with students to be able to build these collaborative opportunities, and really equip them with a really rich learning experience. So some examples then of this in practice, and I've chosen a couple of examples here from SELA and then from our mechanical engineering degree program, really to illustrate the power of bringing industry and higher educators together. So SELA, for those of you who haven't heard me talk about this before or haven't come across it, is our Sheffield Engineering Leadership Academy. We're a program that works in partnership with industry and selects high potential engineering undergraduate students, and then works with them over a 2-year program alongside their degree program to help them develop leadership capability and shape them into leaders of tomorrow. And we're highly selective each year. From the 1,200 students we have in our engineering year groups, we select just 40 students to participate in the program. And we do that based on their potential to succeed and based on our assessment of their potential as future leaders. And once they've joined the program, we work with them on a series of skills workshops. We have guest speakers who come in and support those and really try to build their skills and knowledge. They have experience in industry through the summer placements that I've mentioned already. And then running along each of the 2 years that they're with us, they have an integrative project. And these are real year-long projects with real deliverables and a real budget. So the aim here is to deliver some real value. It's not the same as the kind of projects that typically would happen in a degree program, where the end point is that the student might come up with a concept, but really the end point for them is that they get a grade for that. Here the value is in them delivering something for real, with a real budget and with real stakeholders involved. We do that by linking students with real issues locally and nationally so that they can see their impact and recognise their agency. And together, this gives the students a space to practice, check their understanding, and integrate the learning that we're giving them. So I'm not going to go through all of these examples because time doesn't permit me to, but just to highlight a couple of particularly relevant ones. We have had our students for the last couple of years engage with the Get Up to Speed event that you heard about earlier in the session from Marie. And through that, our students have been challenged to create a piece of public engagement. Their response to that last year was to create an escape room style challenge, which was themed around a lunar base. And through that, to engage the young people coming into the event with solving a series of engineering challenges using their learning from science and maths in school, and then to connect that into engineering and help them see the opportunities that engineering might offer. And then in terms of a more industry-focused project, a more technical project, we had students last year working with Tinsley Bridge, a local steel fabricator, to address the decline in manufacturing by creating an energy monitoring solution in collaboration with Tinsley Bridge. So they looked at how they could make the operations more efficient through using Internet of Things technologies, and then fed back to the directors through a report. Some of you will remember that they came and spoke at an event about this time last year, I think, in the Northern Crucible network, to share some of the learning that they'd gained from that kind of project. Partnership with industry is crucial to delivering this kind of experience. Our industry partners have helped to shape these projects. Partners from our industry contacts mentor the students, introduce the students to their networks, and so help to really make this a rich learning experience for all the participants. The students greatly value this experience. There's just a couple of points here that they raised in talking about this. But they recognize themselves that actually doing this kind of work shifts their focus to the value that they can deliver as engineers and away from what grade am I going to get for a piece of work, which is a really positive shift, because when they're focusing on delivering value, then good grades follow that. And so it's right that they focus on what output value they can deliver. And they recognize too that this kind of learning experience connects their learning to the real applications. So they move beyond the theory and into being able to see how that theory can guide practice and the impact that they can make. The value to industry, here's a quote, I won't read it to you, I'm sure you can read it here on the slide, but recognizing that there was value to the industry in engaging with us in this process too. And that's brought about positive change in Tinsley Bridge as a result of the work that the students did and the conversations that they were able to have with our students through that process. Briefly to kind of wrap up, from mechanical engineering, we've seen that the SELA model has started to influence our thinking around how we're developing and innovating our mechanical engineering degree program. So we've taken inspiration from the kind of projects that SELA runs, and also been guided by input from our industry partners, talking to our recent graduates and students who are returning from years in industry. And that's led to a new degrees program structure that includes engineering science modules, which are there to retain what industry told us was outstanding technical ability in graduates, but combines that with semester-long projects that integrate learning across modules and simulate application of knowledge in an industry context, have enabled us to reduce the number of pieces of assessment that we're having for students do by not having that tied to every single module that students are learning, but having bigger pieces of assessment that span multiple modules, and so require that students bring together their learning and their knowledge in exactly the kind of way that our industry partners told the students weren't well equipped to do when they graduate from traditional program structure. And then finally, an integrated spine of professional skills development, where we're focusing on giving students these professional and workplace skills throughout their experience with us, but doing that in a way that gives the students increasing autonomy. So in first year, it's quite structured by us. We give them the kinds of skills that we know they'll need to succeed as learners and as future engineers. But then as they get further through their program, they take responsibility for this professional development training themselves, so that we equip them with the skills to manage their own professional development moving forwards, and prepare them for thinking about CPD in their graduate roles, and as they might want to move towards chartership. So in conclusion, those two examples, I hope, give you some flavour of the success we've had with students, educators and industry working together in partnership. And I emphasize that partnership is crucial. We couldn't have developed these experiences for students without the input of our industry partners, and so we're really grateful for that. Authentic or real learning experiences really enhance students' preparedness for the workplace, but offering those, again, it's crucial that we have input from industry to be able to shape those and make them real or realistic. I think we need to rethink the transition that we have from higher education into industry. I think there was some sense when we talked to employers in the work that we've done that's underpinned the programs that we've introduced, that there's a particular kind of graduate that industry partners are looking for. And I think it's true that as an undergraduate degree program, students who are coming out as fresh graduates can be prepared to be professional engineers. But what we can't do is equip graduates to be the perfect fit for every different kind of engineering direction that they might go into. We can give them the foundation, but there's always going to be a need for industry induction and development that tailors that basic foundation to the particular industry context that you want to put those graduates to work within. And that's why we welcome continued collaboration with our partners, so that we can make that as seamless a transition as possible by preparing students well with the foundations, and then having graduate development programs pick up on those foundations and shape our engineering graduates into the right fit for the particular roles that they're moving into. And then in terms of the numbers, we need to take a longer term view of this. I touched on this earlier. I think we need to be thinking about how do we engage people with engineering much earlier in the educational cycle, help to connect science and maths learning in primary schools, for example, to opportunities that we see through the more creative work that students do in primary school, so that students don't see these things as totally separate, but start to see that by combining science and maths in creative ways, they can do things and solve problems in an engineering context that might then drive that pipeline through secondary school, into A-level and beyond into higher education. I've put some references here to the reports that I've mentioned, and in the final slide here, I've just given you my webpage address, because I've put these slides on there. So if you wanted to get any of those references and look at them in more detail, you'll find if you go onto my website and click on the presentation section, these slides are there, and so you can click and follow those links. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah. So we worked with Gary last year, really, and we had some of the SELA team with us. I've actually visited Tinsley Bridge and sort of saw their work over there, and then we brought them in with us and we took them into United Caspar, I think it was, and it was lively. It was a lively debate.
Absolutely, yeah, it was so charged. It was incredible to hear the students and to hear about their projects.
I think they were inspirational with the way they went about things. I think what you've done really, the important thing I think that you've mentioned is they need to engage, and these opportunities are brilliant. And I would like to, well, obviously we will support it as much as we can. We particularly got involved with Ben and Deanda from our point of view. But let me just run through then some of the questions that were raised along the way while you were talking there, Gary. Okay, where are we? So Anna asked, have there been any staff engagements in industry projects? Are the projects we heard about last year implemented at Tinsley now? And then she goes on to mention Deanna and Ben. So they're actually implemented.
And others. I can't remember the rest of the team, but there was
So a number of questions there, Anna. So in terms of your first question about staff engagement, you mean there's engagement of university staff in these kinds of...
Yeah, you mentioned about train the trainer, because appreciating the fact that a lot of the, well, I would imagine that quite a few of the current lecturers now at the Department of Engineering, Civil Engineering or Mechanical Engineering, are not practicing industrialists themselves. Mm-hmm. So are there projects at the moment, CPD-like projects for university staff to keep their knowledge of industry up to date?
I think it's variable, because a lot of that would happen through the kind of research and depend on the kind of research that those academic staff are doing. So some will be more engaged with industry through that than others, and so more aware of what's happening in that context than others. I think in terms of the kinds of projects that I've talked about here tonight, through the projects that SELA does, for example, we do engage with academic staff, because academic staff help and guide the students on that process in terms of the knowledge that they're bringing to solving the kinds of problems and challenges that they get from industry. So there is a connection there. I think there's scope to do more of that, though, and I think that at the moment we draw heavily on industry coming in and telling us what do we need to deliver as educators to meet the future needs of industry, and we could do more, I think, to equip academic staff with experiences and opportunities to not obviously totally leave their academic research, because that's what the core of their job is, but to find ways to engage more with and have opportunities to come and do work in industry in order to understand what the current workplace is like for students and where they're preparing graduates to go. I think in terms of your second question about where the students have gone with the project, so the quote that you saw in my slides was from Tinsley Bridge, from Alex Kelly. I'm not sure if he's on the call, although he has been into some of these network meetings before. Alex is working now with some input from some of those students and the directors of Tinsley Bridge to implement some of the solutions that the students came up with, and indeed is working with another group of students this year on a project that builds on and extends what those students achieved when you heard from them in the meeting this time last year.
Mm-hmm. Now, John Savage from National Fluid Power Centre has posted, well worth looking at the Perkins report from 2019. Now, I don't know anything about that, and what we might do in the last 10 minutes at the end, we might invite John on just to sort of tell us a little bit about what that is, because to be fair, I don't know what it is, but I'm not sure if you're aware of it, Gary.
No, I've not come across this, so it would be good to hear from John a bit more about it.
Okay, well, we'll invite John in at the end if that's okay. Hopefully he'll be looking at that. Just trying to see what else is on here. We've had a message from David.
Oh yeah.
Let me just have a look. That's a good one. So David says, often new graduates have no sense of whether the answer is in the right ballpark. Interesting that a university is involved in this. I accept that it is in partnership with industry before I get shot. Obviously, it's just sort of, it's a statement. It's not directing it at anybody, but I guess my answer to that, I don't know if you want to answer this, Gary, or I mean, my answer would have been to look at the SELA team in particular, and if you brought that team in to work on a project during the summer for 12 weeks, you are getting a free look at your potential employees, I should say, and I would certainly be encouraging them in, because they should be getting me good information that could save me money through a lean project, for example, getting me data, investigating things, and I would quickly find out who's good in that team. And you can be sure as eggs is eggs, I'd be offering them a contract if I thought they could fit in my team. I think that's often the best way. It's try before you buy kind of thing. That would be my statement. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Sean, I would say that this kind of reflects to me that comment in the IET report about graduates having really good academic knowledge of engineering, but not necessarily the kind of practical how to put that knowledge to work, and how to go from what they've learned in a series of modules into integrating that knowledge into being able to look at a problem and work out which bits of knowledge they need to bring to solving that problem. And that's certainly something that we heard from industry partners when we were looking at our mechanical engineering curriculum review. And it's the reason that we've gone into these more integrated types of assessment that operate through projects that get students to be working with that knowledge productively across a number of different learning units, rather than doing a learning unit and then having some assessment at the end of that. Having a more holistic view of that and integrating those things so that students get used to having to pull their knowledge together and work out which bits are relevant, so that they do become better at solving those problems and breaking into those problems in the beginning.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much. So we will come back to it a little bit later then, Gary, if that's okay. We'll look at